So I asked it what I said look like polished. Our educational system is morally compromised. It's structured less to educate students than to sort them. It identifies gaps in understanding, penalizes students for having those gaps, and then moves on without ensuring those gaps are repaired. It's a system that prioritizes ranking over mastery, pace over understanding, and punishment over correction is not merely ineffective, it is an injustice. A sharper version, our educational system is not failing by accident. It's built around the wrong purpose. It is designed more to sort students than to educate them. It detects knowledge, it detects gaps in understanding, uses them to penalize learners, and then advances by calendar instead of repairing the weaknesses. That is not education, it is an institutional filtering process dressed up as learning. And a more contact quotable version of this would be the problem with education is not just that it teaches badly, it's built to sort students rather than to truly educate them. If you want the closest polished version to your exact sentence, I'd use this. Our education system is immoral because it is built to sort students rather than educate them. Keeps your original punch without sounding deliberate instead of off the cuff. So yeah, I'm an off the cuff poet though. Anyways, yeah, this is truly how I feel about the whole thing. I mean, why? I mean, grades, for instance. I mean, for one thing, this grading. I mean, what do you want me to say about it? I've not been the most articulate about a critique of it. There's a girl who wrote a really good video. Grades are a scam. You might want to go watch her stuff. But no, Campbell's Law again, right in you could right here as well. With respect to things, the more a metric that is being used is tied to economic incentives and everything else, the more likely it is to be subject to gaming and corruption of the process. The more consequences ride on a good result, then the more people will work to undermine, and corrupt the process. Why would I challenge myself and opt in to challenging courses if my ranking in the system is going to fall, on the basis of my making mistakes? Am I going to challenge myself in that kind of scenario? Probably not. I'm going to try to game the system by taking courses I know are easy A's, through the process and everything. And to me, that right there reveals part of the whole problem. I mean, I gamed the system in high school. I managed to boost my GPA by taking courses in typing rather than, despite the fact that I had missed so much of the semester and term that, still managed to have a GPA higher than I deserved because of that one course. Easy A for somebody like me because I was using my computer so much. And so the thing about the whole thing is just it's bullshit. This is a system that and I mean, with respect to academia, the little things finally gave it away. It finally revealed, the real truth behind the whole rotten edifice that it is based all around. This is a system that's designed to create a hierarchy rather than actually educate, and it, fucks itself and gets off overnight about this whole idea of some students being better than others and everything. And I, I gotta say, I didn't come to college for this kind of bullshit politics. I don't want to participate in it. I don't like hierarchy. I don't want to, be ranked. I don't care if I am at the top of that ranking system in some of these courses. I don't care if I'm doing better than other students and I'm an A student. I don't want to be identified as an A student. I just want pass, fail. I don't care. Like, and it's not just that I don't care about the whole thing. I just think it's antithetical to the very, mission of the entire process. This idea of receiving a grade is silly. It's like you're there to educate. Like, do you understand the difference? I I mean, the conveyor belt system, I guess, is designed to, like, okay, here's where you're errant, okay, in another big way. Alfie Kahn's Punished by Rewards is a really good example of a book that could tell you why this is a problem. Our whole set of assumptions about how motivation works are completely backwards. In practice, this is not how motivation actually works. The whole thing is our understanding of it, that you need carrots and sticks and that sort of thing, is just totally dead wrong. I mean, when people start doing something purely for the reward of itself, they start to do it poorly. They start to underperform. They do bad. They do worse because they're not as creative, or and they're not as innovative in how they approach things, and so they come into the system with a play it safe approach because of the fact that they want to get that reward so damn badly and everything. And then on top of all that, it beats all the learning of it out of the sorry, it beats all the enjoyment they get out of it. It removes the pleasure of doing it from the process. So this is one of the reasons why, as like a gamer, I know that I'm now at that rank, inside Final Fantasy XI, for example, where I could actually become a professional player. I've been so demotivated against that idea. It's intense, you know, because I know the moment it becomes professional, it's not going to be anywhere near the same level of fun and everything, and it will ruin it permanently. It will never be the same level of fun for me again to come in as a player that's just there to play, and have fun. It will never be that way for me again after I become a professional player. So it's like, I it causes that sort of that sense of sacrifice and not wanting to make that sacrifice to come into me and to demotivate me against that, whole process. I don't want to do it. I mean, I know I could make money this way, but I just don't want to do it. I don't want to ruin the game for myself in this manner, in terms of financial rewards. And so it's like, I know what will happen. I won't never enjoy it the same way I used to again. I know this. And so, the thing about it is that this punish by rewards, thing is totally accurate. I know this from these experiences. I know the way that this feels. I can tell you from the core of my emotional truth, the moment you start giving me an incentive to do something and everything, and I start doing it for the incentive alone, it's no longer really enjoyable to do. And you'd have to keep raising that incentive and raising it and raising it and raising it to keep me doing it. It would have to keep escalating and escalating and escalating, just to, get me to the point where I was motivated by it, and so you've got this really terrible, terrible system that, assumes that kids need gold stars and good grades and all these other things to motivate students to actually show up and put in the work. And in the meantime, this is all not how humans actually work. You've got a system that it makes all these assumptions about how human beings actually are, and it doesn't actually correspond to what human nature is actually like. And I think a lot of my frustrations with the system too is that it just is like, I have the same frustrations in a lot of ways about our society. I was brought up in the American academic system, and we were educated about the Soviets at some points in our system. And one thing that got brought up about the Soviets a lot was that the system worked on paper, but it didn't in reality because it conflicted with human nature. Supposedly, that was what we were told. Once it encountered human nature, people started to, like when the statement, from each according to their abilities, to each according to their needs, happened, people would play games with the system by inflating their needs and undermining and pretending that their abilities were much less than they actually were. They played weak and demanded and pretended to be needy, inside a system like that, because that, got rewarded, and people started to, undermine it in that sort of way, because that was how the incentive structure was aligned under communist systems, and that was what we were told. Well, if the Soviet system conflicted with human nature, then our system will fail for the very same reason, because so many of the processes that undergird human civilization have no respect for human nature and engage in all kinds of subversion to annihilate it. Everything from the way that in high school the class starts times are structured at 7:40, despite the fact that teenagers are shown by research to need more sleep than adults and everything, and to be in a pivotal period of development in their lives where they need additional sleep and they tend to be more nocturnal as a result and stay up later as a result of changes in their life at that stage in those years. We still try to knock that out of them by forcing them to attend classes at 7:40 in the morning, and this kind of shit will eternally be frustrating for me because I lived through it. I will never forget that aspect of it and how hard it was and actually literally impossible for me to comply with. It was a formative experience for me. At the end of the day, I saw it and I will never forget it. It is, yeah, and I will never feel that we coddle the youth because of it, as so many people seem to perceive it. I think that they are psychotic and delusional. They're not right. They see things in a warped way that is inaccurate. Our students are not, in fact, coddled. Our youth are not, in fact, coddled. Our society doesn't so much coddle them as attempt to eat its young. So when I look at this corrupted process and I look and see what it's doing, I can see the seeds of a rotten system that I'm starting to see the cracks in the system. It basically creates a system so you're an A student, you're a C student, you're a B student, and everything, and it pushes these grading through. And I don't believe in any of this stuff. This is not a pedology. I mean, if we were really trying to educate, we wouldn't be so concerned with giving a grade to students. We'd be just concerned with creating the mastery over the topic, you know. And I'm just so fucking done with everything. I'm so disillusioned with the whole fucking thing that all I can think is fuck the entire process. Now, I may sound like I'm raging in a sense of with a sense and seething with a sense of jealousy for the A student, but that's not really where the spirit of where my frustration has been born in this whole rant that I've been on. I don't begrudge the A student anything or envy them anything. I mean, they had to work very hard to get where they were and everything. So, I don't like. What do you want me to say about that? I'm not jealous. I just think that it is fairly rotten that we have a system that is more concerned with ranking students than actually educating them. I'm starting to see how fucked up everything actually is, and you can thank someone can for a lot of this, you know. But you can also thank a whole litany of people along the way when I started to read blogs and everything about what you had to do to learn the language. They made very clear that you had to be able to make mistakes. You had to have the courage to make mistakes in order to learn languages, because otherwise you were just not gonna, you were not gonna take the risk that it took to speak in conversationally to anybody in that language and everything. You were never gonna take those risks because you were too terrified to make a mistake and everything. And so, they made very clear that you had to do this, but our system penalizes those very same mistakes and everything. And I'm not fucking around when I say that humans learn by making mistakes, fixing those mistakes, and going through that whole process. There's a process of learning that people learn through and everything, and our system does everything it can to interrupt and undermine that process. And then it goes and about and creates a system of ranking and everything in order to give gold stars to the ones that our teachers feel did the most work or were the most compliant with what they were looking for as by their standards and everything. And I just think that the whole thing is rotten. It's bullshit because it flies in the face of what should be the institutional mission of the whole fucking school, which is just to educate, not. And what happens is that the twisted system ends up starting to become the priority of things, and that in practice you see it play out where the grades become more important than actually understanding the subject material at hand. you know People become motivated by the grade itself rather than to understand the course material itself and to do better at that sort of thing. And I think it's just rotten. So to me, I mean, I want to be able to read, and understand an oscilloscope. I have, I have a whole vision in mind of being able to make use of an oscilloscope and everything and solder. And I know that, I can use this outside the boundaries of employment, because then I can just kind of go and attract customers directly I don't need employers and everything anymore. They kind of become just as obsolete as the education system is becoming, and and everything and all this. And so, this is my rant. I don't, I'm starting to kind of form an educational manifesto against the system at hand. I don't believe in ranking. I don't want a rank. I don't want to participate in this. It's all politics. It's all a kind of politics that I don't want any part in. I mean, count me out, man. This shit ain't for me. So, I go to a class and everything. I just want my professor to either give me a pass or fail, and I don't want to be A, B, C. I don't want it. I don't care. I mean, even if I'm his best student, I don't want, or her best student, I don't want it. I don't want to rank. Because to even participate in that system implies that I believe in what it does, and to me, grading just gets in the way. And it encourages people not to take risk at everything, and so the whole thing is a scam. Read Alfie Kohn's Punished by Rewards.